What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Couple on Fire podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk all about growth lives in the uncomfort zone, and that's coming up
right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Couple on Fire podcast. This podcast is for couples, for marriages, and for families within the Christian community. We exist to help break the stigma that happens within the Christian community. We're talking about divorce, we're talking about addiction, and we're talking about so much more. We believe that all this is possible in this life, strictly based on the power of Jesus Christ and his ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in. What is up? What is up? What is up? Welcome to today's show. Hey, if you're brand new, you've never joined us before, Christy is wailing ahead. If you've never joined us before, I'm your host, Josh. I'm here with my beautiful, awesome, intelligent wife, Christy.
Hello.
How are you, love?
I'm amazing.
You are?
Yeah, I went to bed at 8:30 last night, and I got a lot of sleep.
You did.
I need to go to bed at 8:30 more often.
You always say that.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually something that you always say.
Mm-hmm.
So what's on your mind? Anything new?
Nope.
We're clean as a slate today.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm just going to stop asking that question because she used to have stuff and now she's just kind of stopped responding to that question. So she doesn't want to talk about anything.
No.
Really. No.
I mean, how's everybody coming on their New Year's resolutions or
your word of the year?
The word of the year.
Or your goals for the year.
I mean, we're not even out of January yet. Got good updates going.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be curious about that.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm progressing in mine. I feel like you're progressing in yours.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we get.
I'm just like, let me see yours, and then we can tell each.
You know mine.
We can hold each other accountable to if we're actually progressing.
Oh, but you know mine though.
I don't have it memorized.
Well, this is supposed to be a marriage podcast. My wife doesn't care. It's fine. That's what she's teaching us. So, growth lives in the uncomfort zone, right? This is such a great topic because, when we talk about things on this podcast, we talk about all different types of topics, right? Not just stuff specifically marriage related, but let's be honest, everything that we do in our lives is going to impact and affect our marriage to some degree, whether that's the level of how we're focusing on our spiritual growth, our physical growth, our mental growth, all of these different things, right? So it's important that we talk about this. So when we talk about growth, where it lives, because it lives in the uncomfort zone, this is something that we really want to focus on today.
Yeah.
All right, before we get in, there's a Bible verse I'd like to read, or would you like to read it?
You read it, baby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So kind of an overarching Bible verse. I think
it's your name.
Give some inspiration to this. Is found in the book of Joshua, right? It's 1:9 is what it is. It says, I have not commanded you, or have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And I believe this is such a powerful thing because God calls us to things that are uncomfortable, but he also tells us that he's going to be with us through this uncomfort because this is where growth is to be had, right? Be strong and courageous. Now, we have to know that God has our back in the things that he's calling us to do, right? But he's not telling us that it's going to be easy. Actually, the Bible's full of it's not going to be easy. And it seems like we just want to sink back in our comfort all the time, right? Which is normal.
Yeah. So speaking of comfort zones, I also now thought of something that we should talk about, right? That's important. That doesn't have to do with this, but he asked me what's on my mind, which typically has nothing to do with our podcast. And I just remembered because he's wearing the jersey that the Lions lost. And that is something that we should have started with, that the Lions gave us a good run. But talking about the uncomfort zone is Dan Campbell did a lot of things that
people don't agree with to push themselves out of the comfort zone. But it did take them a long way, into the season. It did.
So
it did. And I think it's really, really powerful. So it is kind of funny. So this jersey.
Because he's wearing a jersey. I'm
wearing a Lions jersey, right? And so if you know anything about the Lions, is the jersey that I'm wearing is my favorite player that plays on there, right? And so the thing is, it's pretty ironic. If you know anything about us, you've been following our podcast for a while, is we are huge Michigan State fans, okay? And if you live in Michigan, you either love one team and hate the other. That's usually how that works. And so, yes, we loathe the other team, and this guy played for Michigan. And so, but I believe that when you are favored of a team, you're favored of that team. Okay. And so I'm wearing this.
That's the year I graduated high school, though.
That's the reason why I got it, really, is I want to support my wife, not the Lions. So anyway, so number 97, right? So if you know anything about that, then there you go. So we want to talk about the things, right, that are about how to find your growth within the uncomfort zone. That's our 4 things we want to talk about. But first off, Carrie says, we went to bed early last night too.
That's right.
It was a good night. I actually went to bed at 9:45 last night.
Which he normally goes to bed at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
No, it's not 1 o'clock in
like
the morning.
midnight, same thing.
Sometimes midnight.
Same thing.
I try to go to sleep around 11:30. So yeah, but it was early for me as well.
Same thing as 1 a.m. to me.
It's right. And she went to bed at 8:30, which is the same thing as like 4 p.m. So there we go. And Rob says, no resolution moving forward on invest, which is an awesome, awesome power word. So
what's your word?
Mine is level up. Mine is 2 words.
Oh, yeah. 2 words.
Level up. What is yours?
Do you remember?
No. What is it?
Serenity.
Serenity. What's that even mean?
It means calm, peaceful, untroubled.
Are you being calm and untroubled?
I have to focus on it every day. That's why it's my word.
You got super serious about that.
That's why it's my word. Like this morning, even while I was doing my devotionals, I'm just like, blah, 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 and then all of a sudden, I like the Holy Spirit's like serenity. I'm like, oh yeah, calm, peaceful, untroubled. I have a very hard time with it.
Like your 2.5 hour drive this morning to work?
2 hours and 45 minutes.
2 hours and 45 minutes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of serenity in that?
No.
Probably not. Moving on. Okay, so we talk about number 1. Our first point is, first off, we have to be able to define the comfort zone, right? If we want to define the comfort zone, understand what a comfort zone is and why it feels so tempting to stay within those bounds. We have to understand that a comfort zone, we need to define for ourselves, because comfort zones for everybody is different, right? And so the first point really under this is when we talk about comfort versus complacency, and Kristen and I kind of talked a little bit about this beforehand. And sometimes it feels like comfort and complacency is the same thing. But comfort for some people is complacency in certain areas of their life. And we have to be willing to define that, what that means to us as an individual. We may be, each individually may be comfortable with something, but not complacent in that comfort. What do you got? You're staring pretty hard, so.
No, I'm listening to you. I'm waiting for my turn.
Oh, okay. I'm just asking.
Be impatient.
But it's true, right? I mean, it is true. Everybody has different comforts. And we have to be willing to be honest with ourselves about whether we're being comfortable or we're being complacent.
Yes, but I'm also giving the definition of comfort zone.
Oh, good.
Right?
So, like Webster's, or like who's telling us this?
Me. So the comfort zone is, where you feel safe and in control, right? And as you move out of it, this is actually a psychology 101. As you move out of the comfort zone, you go into the fear zone, that's where you start feeling a lack of self-confidence. You find excuses. You start being affected by other people's opinions. But if you can push through that, you enter into the learning zone, which you deal with challenges and problems. You acquire new skills. You extend your comfort zone, as you're learning. Then if you continue through that, you enter the growth zone, which is you can find your purpose, living out your dreams, setting goals, achieving them, and conquering objectives. So I think it's really awesome how they, the psychology side of it really lays it out, because complacency and comfort there can be such a line or a gray line with those two things, but recognizing maybe the steps that you're in to push yourself through it to get out of it. I know Josh, used to be a runner. I mean, he's running now, but I mean, in school, he ran races and things like that. And I remember you would tell me, like, your body hits a wall and you really want to quit. You really want to stop running. Like, everything hurts, all of these things. But and a lot of runners I've heard say this, if you can get past that point, it's like all of a sudden a whole new world opens up of your body if you push through that.
Yeah.
In your mind.
Right. So keep that really matches the second point really, really well. So keep that on the forefront, because what you've been talking about is perfect to go along with the second point.
Oh, okay.
But when it comes to us trying to define what our comfort zone is we really need to be able to recognize the signs of what we feel like we're being in our comfort zone, because it's real easy to make excuses for us to be inside our comfort zone, thinking that we're working hard within that. And there's some accountability that definitely comes into play in that. But for me, a comfort zone for me, believe it or not, a major comfort zone with me is my wife. My wife doesn't want me to be uncomfortable, right? And I think we do that with each other in a lot of ways. And we want each other to be happy and comfortable, and we want each other. And so I have to be very careful when, telling and complaining a little too much about something, because then my wife will be like, it's okay, it's all right. And that is a comfort thing. And so I have to be cautious myself to make sure that I'm not, eliciting those signs to her, so I can get back the okay, the verification that it's okay for me to stay in that zone of that way. Because I think we're really bad for each other in certain areas of our lives. Other ones we push because we're very competitive with each other. But I think other areas we seek comfort from each other in those ways to find it's okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, sometimes it's like you have to be careful because you can be too hard on yourself in so many areas. So I think in a lot of marriages, it can be like a comfortable or complacency thing with it, because I don't want, no matter what I say, you're going to be beating yourself up about it anyway. And so I'd rather just be like, it's okay. Like, make a plan if you're unhappy with it, and stick to the plan and move forward. Like, there's nothing you can do about it now. And I think it's important for relationships to have that. Many, many marriages, I feel like, beat each other up or nag one another or try to make each other feel bad. So yes, you're right. Like, we aren't good accountability partners. We specifically are not good accountability partners when it comes to our diet. So it's like
bad.
We are comfortable being uncomfortable in our bodies. Like, we may say that we're not comfortable, but our eating habits show otherwise. And if we are going all in on something, and then all of a sudden one of us will be like, I really want some ice cream. The other one will be like, man, yeah. Because we both thinking it anyway. I was
wanting it too.
We were both thinking it anyway. So then it's like, but I think if we both get on about the diet, even if, because I'm like, once we're both on, I'm like, we can never have any bad things ever.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, babe, like, we can have, it's been 6 months. Like, we can have something.
We can have a bowl of ice cream.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of hot and cold.
It is. And I think that's the idea, though, is to understand that you can find some comfort in some of them items without being complacent in that area too. And I think that's a big struggle in that way, to teach us to grow through that. Like, having a bowl of ice cream doesn't mean that we need to have a bowl of ice cream every day.
But I think it's important for, like, especially with this specific point number one, in marriages, to have more communication about whether do both of you feel like you're stuck in a comfort zone in something.
Being complacent,
because one person, sometimes marriages are unequally yoked when it comes to, let's just say, working out. And one person may be completely neglecting the family and everything else because they want to be at the gym every single day.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, no, I'm not comfortable with this. I want to be all in on, and I'm just using this as an example because it's the
You see this
one.
a lot, though.
Yeah. And then the other person is just like, yeah, but you're neglecting us, you're neglecting time with the family and all this stuff because you're spending 2 hours every single day at the gym, which can be a little bit of selfishness in there. And so you guys do have to talk about this, and maybe something that you can do together. Josh and I have done a podcast on, as a couple, what you can do, maybe compromises that you can make for both of you to be on the same page with things like this. So I think it's just important to, maybe one person feels like they're in a comfort zone, but the other person is like, no, you're not. Like, you're way outside. You're constantly pushing, and you're neglecting all of these other things.
It could be because the exercise or the working out thing is huge. So you almost always, if you see, I would say 80% of the time, you'll see a couple, and you can tell one's really fit and one's really unfit. And that's either the woman's really fit or the guy's really fit, or the woman's really unfit and the guy's really unfit. And it's like very unbalanced. And for that reason, it's like they just completely separate in those things and go about their way instead of saying, hey, let's learn how to be uncomfortable together and not complacent in these certain areas. And
you can usually monitor that on social media.
Yeah.
Like, they'll both be unfit, and then one will
fit.
start getting fit. And the other one, even on social media, sometimes will start going along with them a little bit for these things. But they're doing things separately and their own eventually, and then they're divorced. Then I mean, seriously, it's like,
It's crazy. It's crazy. All right, so that's number one, right? Defining the comfort zone. Number two.
so I think I defined it. That was the whole point of my earlier.
It was. You
thing.
talked a lot about psychology, which is our next point, right? What about the
That's
psychology?
where the definition comes from.
What about the psychology of discomfort, right? The role of stress, right? Introduce the concept of what they call EUSTRESS, eustress. How positive stress can lead to growth and improved resilience, right? We have to understand that stress isn't always bad. There's good stress, right? We have to understand there is stress that comes from discomfort or being uncomfortable in pushing ourselves. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's a lot of value that comes from that, especially when you talk about neurologically, which is something that you got really hot on for a while. You read a book about the brain chemicals and about all these things. And there's a lot of psychology that goes behind being uncomfortable.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I want to reread that book. Meet Your Happy Chemicals.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I
Talks
still
about
have
the four good, four bad, I think. Great, yeah.
Serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine. I can't remember the other one.
I know. I can't remember either.
Yeah. But it's a really, really good book.
Yeah.
But really quick, I just thought of something else to go back to the comfort zone. And it kind of can be the psychology of the discomfort in growth section 2 is, let's say you're a person that's constantly growing and constantly trying to read books and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. Maybe that's your comfort zone now. And to push yourself or to stress yourself outside of that comfort zone, you need to learn how to have a day of rest. Maybe you need to learn how to have a day of silence where you're just contemplating and and just looking at how far you've come. Because a lot of times once you get into that mode, it's like you're really not growing any further. You're just grabbing more knowledge, but you're not doing anything with it.
Action is not matching.
Yeah. So you have to be like, okay, where is self-care coming into this? Where is a downtime day coming into this? And I really think that the discomfort of the growth, like the role of stress, like Josh was just talking about, having it is you get resilience when you're in discomfort or uncomfortable situations. You get resilience from it, but even if you don't realize you have resilience, you're learning. And there's a story, Josh may be able to tell the story better than me. But experience is what sets people apart. And I'm thinking of the story like knowing what bolt to turn, right? Like someone goes in and he's like, the bill is for knowing what. Yeah,
it's $1 million, but $999,000 is for knowing which
one to turn. Yeah. And the only reason why is because that person had went into so many different scenarios where they had to go through. And it's different machines, different times, different
scenarios,
seasons, like all of these things. And then experience, even if you just leave college, you have all the stress from college. You go in and you go into situations, and everybody talks about this. 99% of the time, it's nothing you learned in the books in school. It's from being in the real world experience and having to deal with all of the things too. So over time, of all these different things that stress you out, that you have to figure out, that you have to bounce back from or eat crow or whatever, it's giving you that knowledge space in your brain to just know what to do the next time that comes up. Yeah. And sometimes that takes years.
And you can't fake that. Like you have to grind through that.
And that's exactly how it is in marriage. So these young people get married, right? And then they start hitting all these walls of stuff. Normal stuff.
And they're ready to jump out.
You're going to fight about kids and career and how to balance money and how to in-laws and how to balance your relationship amidst all of those things. And it takes continuous trial and error. Okay, that didn't work. Somebody's mad. We got to revisit it. Let's go. Constant going for your marriage to get resilience and your marriage to grow in those things and to not just jump ship at the slightest thing of like, okay, we've been fighting for 6 months. Okay, we'll fight for 6 years
any longer.
Like
right?
That's what it takes.
Yeah. I can't handle this anymore. Like, wait a minute, you've been married for 2 years. Like, what are you talking about? You can handle this for another 15 years at least,
What's funny though, and you and I have talked about this, I'm kind of getting on a rabbit trail, but we always talk about like what we have to do for self-growth, like everything that you have to do and everything we're going to talk about. The majority of people are like, yeah. But okay, take all these points and put them on your marriage. And then people are like, oh,
hold up, wait a minute.
Right. And it's like, no, it's all the time. You're dealing with humans in all the ways. So
the thing is that really stands out to me when we talk about psychology of discomfort is cold plunge. Okay. A cold plunge is a perfect example of the psychology of discomfort. And this is why. I think there's a lot of reasons why you can say doing a cold plunge is beneficial, right? It includes circulation, it's good for your heart.
Inflammation.
Good, it reduces inflammation, like all these things. But I can tell you, I think the greatest thing that doing a cold plunge can do for you is it forces your mind to do something that your body just doesn't want to do. And when you're doing that, that's the most discomfortable thing, most uncomfortable thing you can do. Like, honestly, you jump in an ice bath, you're like, I don't care how much you like the cold. This is the dumbest thing I can do. I mean, so much that I remember we went on vacation a couple years back and we went down, we were on a cruise. We're down at this island. It's one of the things, the tours we were on, where you go down the side of this mountain. It took like an hour and a half to walk down the side of this mountain to this beautiful waterfall, hidden waterfall. Well, they said in the small area, they're like, well, you can swim out to it. Like, great. Well, Chrissy jumps in, she starts heading out, and I go to get in, and I'm like, okay, hold up. Like, this is the coldest water I think I've ever been in before. And I'm like, it's fine.
I have never seen you
it's
like
cold.
that.
And I went to go get in it, and my body stopped. Like, it just wouldn't do it. It just wouldn't do it. And then Christy's like, it's fine. I'll just go without you. It's okay. And then she starts going. I'm like, oh, no. I'm just like, and then I went, and I'm telling you, when I went into that water, my body shut down. My mind shut down. I don't know what happened. Eventually, I come out of the water. We go to get a picture taken. I have blood all over my face. Like, my body went into complete shock. I got a bloody nose out of it, right? But that's the point, right? There's so much value. Like, you're not going to die from going into a little bit of cold water. Like,
but it shows you how strong your mind is over your body.
That's exactly right. It shows you, like, I'm thinking to myself, I'm getting in this water, and my body's like, no, we're not doing that. And I think there's so much value in that. I think we don't realize the subtleness of this in our everyday life, of all the things that happen with us. So many things we just prevent ourselves from doing because we're not allowing our mind to be strong. The psychology of growth.
Yeah.
We start learning how to do these things, and it automatically starts to apply to other areas of our lives. And we can see things that grow that we normally wouldn't see grow if we're willing to do these things.
Yeah, and your body didn't want to go in it, but your mind starts to agree with your body.
That's right.
Your mind wants to protect you.
You're training.
That is...
My mind's in charge, though.
That is exactly what your mind wants to do, is keep you safe at all times. And so you have to teach it to, like, no, we're going to be fine. We're going to go in to get that strength and build up.
It really brought up because when you first read that definition and you kind of started talking about that.
Do you want me to read something about it?
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like, I mean, originally when you started reading that, it really brought that to forefront of my mind because the psychology of that is so powerful.
Yeah.
We sell ourselves because of fear so often to stay away from certain things because many of us, the majority of us, we fear failure to some degree. We don't want to fail in these certain areas. So what we do to protect ourselves is we don't bother. And a cold plunge is such a prime example of that. Mm-hmm. We have to prime ourselves, just like you said. We have to keep putting ourselves in these situations to fail, to get stronger and better. And all of a sudden, we have less fear of growing in other areas of our lives. And there's so much power
that's the fear zone.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's number 2. Number 3. What about some strategies to be able to embrace discomfort? We have to come up with some strategies, and there is some strategies that you can learn to help embrace discomfort in your life, like setting goals. You mentioned it earlier.
Yes. Setting goals. I think a good measurement for embracing discomfort is our fear. So what do we always say is the definition of courage? It's not being afraid, but it's doing things in spite of the fear.
Yeah.
So I think it's good for us. A lot of Christians will say, I feel like God was calling me into this situation, and it was like, no way. I was so scared to do it, but I did it anyway to be obedient to God. And I think that's what we have to measure that off of. Because if we're like, oh, there really isn't anything that I feel like I need to grow in, that should be a red flag. That what do you have that you would never do? Is it a fear of speaking, a public speaking? Maybe you should put yourself out there to share your testimony with people.
So good.
Is there, can you sing and you just or like, there's no way I could sing in front of people. And it's like, well, God gave you that gift. Is that something he's putting on you? Is it starting a podcast? Is it taking your marriage or approaching another marriage of friends that you have that you see are struggling and saying, hey, can we sit down and talk to you guys? Because we really want to help you through your marriage, or maybe give you some tips. Put yourself out there in the things that that you're scared to do. And that is definitely a good measurement for where you're in your comfort zone, and you need to kind of push yourself out in a good way, not a bad way. Like, hey, I'm really scared to spend $10,000 on a trip, and you don't have any money. You probably shouldn't do that. You probably shouldn't put yourself in debt to go on a vacation. You should get yourself out of debt first, be responsible, all of those things.
Yeah. And I think a good strategy is understanding and embracing small steps. Like, we don't just have to chunky dunk on everything that we do, right? And we feel like we were unprepared. We jumped into it. We went big step in the beginning. Oh, but it didn't work. See, and we reconvince ourselves that it was a bad idea.
That's a learning.
Yep. And then you retract. And so a great strategy is like, no, I'm going to plan appropriately. I'm going to set some healthy goals, and then I'm going to take small steps, which means I'm going to make progress forward, right? Consistently working towards that, whatever that means. Not everyone is going to get up and speak in front of a group of people right away. But what's your plan, and where are your small steps leading to that? Have you joined a Toastmasters club? Have you, started offering to run small groups maybe at your church or at your work?
Even reading in front of a group. So
something, yeah.
I had a lady at the last Bible study.
I feel targeted with this podcast. You are, sir.
Rob. I had a lady at the last Bible study we went to. I mean, just in this small group of like 6 or 7 ladies, not even want to read. And she knows how to read. Okay. It's not like we're asking a person that doesn't know how to read, but to read like a verse in the Bible in front of like 6 or 7 people. That would be a good starting point, for someone, is to just get used to reading in front of other people. It
builds confidence.
It builds confidence. Yeah. Like, where could you take, if you're scared, to speak in front of other people, could you volunteer at an assisted living home or, another old folks home of some sort, and go in and read to the elderly? Because that's giving them a blessing, being able to visit with them and read to them, but also conquering a fear of your own.
It's true. Yeah. And I mean, we also have to ask ourselves, are we seeking support? That's another great strategy. Yeah. Are we seeking support? Are we putting ourselves in a position where people are encouraging you to go and do the things that you're trying to grow in, right? There's nothing worse than saying, and I'm just using this as an example because it's easy, right? I'm not going and seeking out a group of friends that are all overweight and looking to them to encourage me to lose weight. That's not what that's not a good support group.
It's like Tony Robbins with The View.
Yeah. Yeah.
When they all went to him and said, we want to be accountability partners to lose weight. This was years ago.
Yeah. And he was like,
this is when The View is good. It's not, I wouldn't suggest that now.
Yeah. But he was like, that's a horrible idea.
Yeah. Because you all are overweight now, and you all struggle.
Yep.
You're not going to hold each other accountable like you should. You guys each need to find a fit friend and have them hold you accountable.
That's a support group.
Yeah.
That's somebody that's going to support you in your journey, right? Find somebody that maybe is a little further along than you, and then ask them to help support you in your journey. There's so much importance to that. They always say, I mean, we hear this growing up all the time, right? If you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? If you're the fittest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And we can apply this to so many. If you have the strongest spiritual walk in the room, you're probably in the wrong room unless you're pouring into that. But that's not what this is about. This is about our own growth, right? And so I always say, and we agree with this, Christy and I agree with this, right? So we're like, if we're not getting fulfilled, if we don't feel like this area of our life isn't growing, then we have to stop relying on whatever it is that we're going to feed us. We got to go find a new support group area and allow that to feed our growth. And there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes that hurts people's feelings. Maybe it's a family member that isn't supporting you in a proper way. And you're like, okay, well, I have to stop coming to you for support because you're not supporting me the way that I need. And I'm going to go to this other maybe family member, friend, person from church. It's going to help support you in your journey of growth. It's important. That's a fantastic strategy.
Yeah. And I think you need to learn how to have embracing uncomfortable conversations in your marriage too. So if we're talking about taking your marriage to the next level, Josh and I, even just this past year, are like, naturally, we didn't sit down and say, what's an area of our relationship that you think we could get better? And what's an area do I think? And what's something uncomfortable or maybe that you've been unwilling to want to share with me? We never really had that conversation, which you could. We just started having tough conversations with each other. It seems like the last like 2 or 3 months about subjects that we've kind of backburnered because there was things that were more important at the time. And now those are coming to the forefront and we're forcing ourselves to have these uncomfortable conversations with each other. And a lot of times they don't feel good. They feel yucky.
Icky.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. And
Embarrassing. Yeah.
And all of those things, maybe with some self-confidence things that we have. I don't know. It's been a lot of uncomfortable conversations. But now as we continue to have them and continue to revisit them, our relationship does even feel stronger. And at one point I didn't know if our relationship could ever feel stronger. Right. And it's like, now it's like,
That's so true.
it feels even stronger and it feels even stronger. And I think this is important to take these things, yes, and mirror and reflect it on yourself, but then also turn it around and say, how can we do these together and for our marriage to make it better? Yeah. And don't have it turn into, you need to do this, you need to do this. That's the self one.
Yes.
Right. Have it be like, what can we do together to take our marriage to the next level?
Agreed. That's good. All right. Our fourth and final point is, what about the role of faith when it comes to being uncomfortable, right? Seeking growth. What about our faith? What role does your faith play into your personal growth and your ability to do that?
So I think, especially in the Christian community, I like to call it analysis paralysis in the working world, but I mean, it's more like prayer analysis, prayer paralysis in the Christian world, because a lot of times we are like praying and praying and praying and praying and praying, and we're like, I just don't feel like God's giving me clear direction on that. And a lot of times we want to sit and say that we're waiting on God and sometimes that's true, but really God's waiting on us.
That's so true.
So God's waiting on us to take the action of what is in our capabilities to do. And then God does the supernatural thing that we can't do. So if you're looking for, well, I'm waiting for God to tell me to leave my job, that's something you can do. God's not going to give you a clear cut. I don't believe he will. It give you a clear-cut sign to leave your job, because that's something that you could put out resumes, you could do those things, and then God would do the supernatural. He'll have people call you and you'll get the interviews that you're supposed to get. That's stuff that's out of your control that God would do. And it's the same thing for your marriage again, too. It's you're praying to God and praying to your God, please give my husband more patience with me. Why don't you be a person that allows your husband to have more patience with you instead of just being like, well, this is me, you should learn to have more patience with me. You really have to have self-reflection in these things.
I agree. And it reminds me of the story that probably most everybody has heard, but
Let me guess. The boat story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is.
I thought of that story too, though. I'm glad you're bringing it up.
Yeah. We'll tell it.
No, you tell it. I've already talked a lot.
So, I'm sure everybody's heard the story, but where there's a person that was on a ship and the ship capsized and this one guy's floating out at sea.
Okay, you're not committed to telling the story good. Tell the story good.
I'm going to do the quick version.
Okay.
I'm going to do the quick version. And so the guy's floating at sea and he doesn't want to die and he's crying out to God and he's like, oh, dear Lord, I don't want to die. Please, send me a sign that I'm going to be okay. Send me a sign that I'm going to live through this, and I'll, a couple hours go by and the guy's barely still floating alive there. And all of a sudden a boat comes by and the guy's like, hey man, I'm here to save you, get in the boat. And he's like, no, wait, God's going to send me a sign. He's going to let me know. And, and this happens a couple times. Finally, the guy drowns, goes to heaven. He looks at God and he's like, what happened? I trusted you that you were going to send me a sign. Everything was going to be okay. And he's like, I sent you 3 boats. I sent you 3 boats. And I think we are people of always getting the boat sent to us, but we're always looking for something different. We're looking for the easy button all the time. We're looking for something that we expect God to do for us, but we don't expect ourselves to do.
Right. There was a meme that I saw a long time ago, and I wish I would have saved it on my phone. I don't think I did, but it shows a person leaning on a shovel, and it just said, don't pray to God to give you a hole while leaning on the shovel or something like that.
Yeah, that's good.
And the Bible, God wants us to take the first step in faith. He wants us to, like, if we have prayed, we should be praying to God about decisions on our lives before we do them. But if we're praying and we don't feel like we're getting a clear-cut answer on it, if it's not going against God's word, if it's not, a direct sin or out of alignment with biblical truth, just take the step in the direction that you feel like is the best for you.
Agreed.
And then God will redirect you to where he'll close doors or, put people in your path, people of wisdom, accountability partners to speak into you while you're still prayerfully seeking him while doing these things. It will work out. I think sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we just sit and want a clear sign from God when it's stuff that he's depending on us to do for ourselves.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk about, we want to have God help us with this growth area, right? Of this uncomfort. Are we first off making our faith our foundation from the whole platform of this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're making a salad, but are we making it in the bowl, in a salad bowl of faith? Are we just trying to make it willy-nilly all over the counter? Are we really truly trying with everything inside? Like, are we using our faith as the true foundation of these things? Are we seeking God's word and encouragement, right? There's so many stories in the Bible that these people were horrible human beings. I mean, if you read the story about Paul, like where Paul started from as Saul and through, I mean, and he wrote most of the New Testament. So there's so much inspiration that can be drawn through God's word that can encourage us in the times of discomfort. It says, hey, why don't we embrace discomfort and know and trust that what God's trying to do in our lives, we can cling to our faith in that and allow God to bring us through those things. Because I promise you, nothing good, right? Nothing great worth having has ever came without discomfort. There is a TV show that talks about how people won the lottery and then lost everything. Okay. If you get it easy, you don't understand how to keep it. And discomfort does that same thing. We can't grow. We can't get good out of ourselves without rolling through discomfort.
That's why God gives us hardships, is so we learn.
We have to. We're not going to grow from those things.
Yeah. So what it also reminds me of, like in the women's Bible study right now, too, one thing that keeps coming up is a saying that's part of this Bible study is God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And it's in I've had to remind myself of that for Josh and I for this podcast, right? We're not qualified to have this podcast, really, to be talking about. We're not biblical scholars. We're not any of those things. We just felt like God has given us each of us individually. God has saved us and walked us through so many hardships personally before we even got together. And then so many hardships together, like in our marriage, that we wanted to put something out for Christians and people that came to God late in life that maybe don't feel like they really fit into the, Christian community, the KJV Christian community, right? Or people that are divorced and now they've gotten remarried, especially in the Christian community. And so we wanted to put these things together, and we still sometimes get people that are like, your podcast isn't biblically sound, and we want it to be, we try to push everybody back to the Bible. We're definitely not apologetics or theologians or anything of that sort. But we always try to point people back to the Bible. We
don't teach the Bible.
We take what we feel like God would want in your life, even something like this. And we're always trying to say, go back to God, do this, do that. But my whole point is, we weren't qualified to do this. We felt like God called us to help create a platform so people can talk about it and do this. And we're just giving it to him. We're just doing it. And whatever he takes from it, we want him to be glorified in all of it, and all of those types of things. And that's what you need to do in your marriage, in your life. You need to pray about it. You need to then say, okay, if I really feel like this is a calling that God has put on me, I just need to do it. Even when people are telling you you're not qualified, those are people, and you have to work. That was the fear zone. If you remember when I read it in the little thingamabobber that I was reading, the little diagram, which they couldn't see, I should have sent it to you. But the fear zone is you're affected by other people's opinions. So once you start to go out of your comfort zone and do things that God's called you to do, you're affected by other people's opinions. If you can get beyond that, you go into the learning zone. And that's when you really start acquiring new skills, and you're learning resilience even from people bashing you. Like, and it's the same in your marriage. Like, what if you start doing things in your marriage that doesn't make sense to the majority of other people in your life? What if they're like, that's all the married couples I know spend nights away from each other, and they have girls' nights out and guys' nights out. What's the big deal about that? All marriages I know hug members of the opposite sex. That doesn't mean you want to sleep with them. But those are lines that you've decided to make in your own marriage. Once you get over those things, you really start to extend your comfort zones. You can deal with challenges differently, personally, in your relationship. And then you get into the growth zone. And that's when you really start feeling like you're functioning on all cylinders with God, being your fuel. And you have to get through those things. You have to. And a community is important. If someone's giving you a hard time about doing a calling on your life, you call me up, because I'll fire you up all day long. I'll be like, who gives a crap about what them people are saying? Yeah. Like, you've read the Bible, you're reading scripture, you're praying to God. It's not going up against biblical truth. You do what you feel like God is telling you to do.
And we have to remind ourselves that anything outside our comfort zone is the uncomfort zone.
Yes.
Everything, no matter what level you're at, which means anything outside of where we are being complacent in our lives is where growth is going to occur. Right. You're going to grow even in the fear zone. You're going to grow even in the learning zone, but where your real growth comes from is beyond both of those, which is ultimately the growth zone where we're truly growing. And it's hard because it's a muscle that we have to work at. We have to exercise. We have to commit ourselves to. And we have to remind ourselves it's really about the community of people that we surround ourselves that are willing to really nurture that and help nurture that with us. And it's okay. A lot of times we have to learn how to prune. I mean, we have pruned over our times in our lives. We've had to learn how to do that. And it's not a bad thing. Just because you prune somebody out of your life doesn't mean that they're a bad person or they're wrong. They may just not be fueling or nurturing the area of growth that you're in at the time. And we have to stop being, you mentioned something about mediocre lately.
Mediocrity, yeah.
Mediocrity. And we have to stop being okay with mediocrity because we're afraid it's going to hurt other people's feelings. Like, you don't have to be mean to say, you know what, I'm going to live my life this direction because this is how I grow. And if it hurts your feelings, let's have a conversation about it. And then after the fact that they still want to be heard about it, then that's on them. And we have to stop living in mediocrity because we fear living in this uncomfort zone.
Yeah. And I have an example where Josh and I, when we first started our podcast, we were doing podcasts on things, we still are, that we were passionate about or we felt. And we became part of a group on Facebook called Nacho Kids. And the group on Facebook seemed very toxic and hateful, and didn't seem like it seemed like they were encouraging one another to destroy each other's marriages, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not going to talk to my husband about his kids. I'm not even going to clean my house anymore because they're not my kids, Nacho Kids, not my problem. And so we did a whole podcast on that, which was tasteful. I went back and had re-listened to it, and it was a very tasteful podcast, but just how we said that we disagreed, with some of the things happening in there. And that wasn't a full picture about what Nacho Kids is about. And what happened is somehow it came across the owners of that, Lori and David Sims, and she reached out to us and was like, hey, I'd really like to talk to you guys about your podcast and what you said about Nacho Kids, it really. And we could have been like, we're not, like, we saw it. We saw like all those things. But no, we're like, okay, if we're wrong, let's talk to them. We had a call with them. They explained to us, how it really was. We had them on 2 or 3 times on our podcast since then. the first time we had them on was to say, hey, you know, the original podcast that we did, it wasn't, you know, the Facebook group isn't a good adaptation of what their actual like core foundation of
their
why
teachings.
of their teachings
Yeah.
is. And we had them on there. We had to be willing to do that. We had to bring them back on our podcast and tell our viewers, like, listen, that wasn't 100% correct. What we said, we got more truth directly from the owners. We have them on, allowed them to say their side of the story. And that's what you have to be willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you grow because of that. We have a really good relationship with them now. We've gained some really good friends, people that have came to our Perfectly Blended events. They know that we've had Nacho Kids stuff, like, what do you call it? Gear or swag that they've sent us for free to give out to people that come to our event. That's the great thing about just growing and knowing, like, okay, I screwed up. Like, let's make it right.
Being willing.
Yeah.
Being willing. So growth lives in the uncomfort zone. Carrie says at the bottom here, she goes, this is a hard topic. I don't like being uncomfortable, and I like to know what's going to happen. Amen to that. This is a challenging podcast that is very thought-provoking. Yeah, you know, we do. We all feel justified in our comfort. Like, we do. And especially the older we get, the more justified. I work hard. I've earned the right. We do all these things. And we haven't earned the right for anything, you know? And if we want to grow and we want to not have miserable marriages and then divorce, we don't want to have kids that don't want anything to do with us, and we don't want to be part of a church where everybody's like, stay away from that dude. You know, we have to be willing to put ourselves in this uncomfort zone, truly grow and become better. And you never reach the top, you know? You can never be holy here on this earth, and you can never reach the limit of your personal growth, individual growth either.
Come on, baby.
So before we end this podcast, though, we had a request for a cameo of our dog.
Come here, baby.
No, you're going to have to get her. You're going to have to go get her.
I'm going to do something.
You have to go get her. So Christy's going to get her real quick and bring her on camera. So we made a promise that each episode we were going to bring our Stella on, our French bulldog, and let her have some camera time. She must have really taken off.
Yeah, she was running away from me because she thinks I'm like going to cut her nails or something. I don't know.
She thinks she's going to cut her nails. Okay, here she is. Oh.
Dun, da, da, da. There's the Stella Bella, baby.
Yeah, Carrie's like, Stella. Yeah.
See,
she's become. She's sniffing the microphone. That's so cute. Her baby. She had spinal surgery here a couple months ago. She is rehabbed so well. So she's an amazing part of our family.
Yep.
We love that dog probably more than most of our kids. No. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So we want to thank you so much for being here. Listen, we're always up for new topics. What topic do you think is a hot topic? I know you keep doing that, but I have to read this.
Oh, sorry. I really like...
She takes things in her hand like this Apple Pencil, and then she starts playing with it, and it's like making the screen go wiki wild. So I have to put that back. So if there's topics, something that you want to hear about that we've never talked about, maybe there's a hot topic right now, maybe there's a question that you have that you want us to talk about, we want to do that. So let us know if there's anything. Let us know. You can instant message us if you want. You can let us know in a comment. However, whichever way you want to do that, you can email us. You can email me at josh@joshandchristy.com at any time that you want, and let us know. So growth lives in the uncomfort zone. I want to thank you so much for being here. If you haven't had a chance yet, please hit subscribe or share, depending on the platform you're on. We are here every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.